It's still morning, so good morning, everybody. I'm so excited with it. We don't need to do all the introduction, but I will start with my friends here with asking about the title of this session. Is it dead? Is it still capitalism alive? Do we have it still alive between us? What do you think, Yanis?
Well, hello everyone. Thank you for having us. Well, let me put it this way. To understand what's happening now with these amazing technologies, with AI and so on, it is crucial not to focus on the tech. These are amazing technologies and amazing machines, but if we really are going to grasp the essence of the period that we're experiencing, this great transformation, we have to understand that we have a new form of capital. Capital, not in terms of money and finance, but economists, I have to confess that I have been one. We define capital as produced means of production. Since fishing rods, you build a fishing rod, not because you want it, but because you want to catch fish. A tractor, an industrial robot. It's a machine that you produce in order to produce something else. So that was what capital always was, ever since we came down from the trees, proverbially. But what lives in your phone is not that kind of capital. For the first time, we have developed machines, the purpose of which are to modify our behavior, not to produce commodities. So the owners of this produced means of behavior modification have a power over us that never existed before. I mean, Henry Ford would have given his right arm to have that kind of power. So this is what I think is my contribution to this discussion. And allow me to just extend it a little bit more. AI, as practiced by OpenAI and Anthropic, is going to be relevant. I mean, the idea of selling subscriptions is dead in the water. What really is going to change things is when AI is embedded in the Google search engine, in the Meta search engine, in the Instacart algorithm, in order to develop a relationship with us so that it will be easier to have a divorce, a heart-wrenching divorce, than getting rid of your bot.
Yeah.
And that's when you become a total serf to the owner of that bot. And finally, one last point, stable coins. Folks, be very scared of stable coins. I'm not going to say more now.
Why?
But it will be the beginning of the next 2008 great financial collapse.
You're very optimistic. Thank you.
My job is not to caress your ears.
Well, that's fair enough. Ramesh, do you agree with Yanis as well?
I agree with Yanis on many, many different levels, and I'm really honored to be with you all today, and especially with you, Yanis, and you, Caroline. I've been researching technology's impacts, digital technology's impacts on the planet and different human populations, cultures around the world for about 20 years. And the research concludes, most of the research that I see concludes the following. There are three types of breaks that have occurred at the minimum. First is technology, especially social media's relationship that we have with ourselves. Many people feel lonely, many people feel disconnected. We feel disconnected from a shared sense of reality. That's the first. And that's something I think many of us can feel and sense. I mean, I don't know how many of you have phantom limb syndrome where you feel your phone buzzing in your pocket. How many of you woke up in bed with your phones? So this is the first. But second is technologies have increasingly disconnected us, digital technologies, especially social media ones, from one another, right? We see algorithms that drive polarization, behavioral modification, as Yanis just pointed out. We're seeing increasingly technologies that treat human beings as data and treat human intelligence as correlation, which is essentially pattern recognition, pattern matching. And third, they have disconnected us from the only planet we've ever known human beings to live upon. Many of us don't realize the rare earth minerals, the water sources, the energy sources. AI going to use more energy than the entire nation of India by 2034. 1.6 billion people in India. I'm of Indian descent. And I think we all need to ask the question, what is it all for? Who is it all for? Who is it all for? We see again and again and again in the United States, including related to our new administration, newish, very painfully for me personally, having worked policy for Senator Sanders in 2020, we see all these announcements with people like Larry Ellison and Sam Altman side by side, offering tens of thousands of jobs. What jobs? Where? We don't see anything. What we're seeing is economic precarity more and more and more. So it's high time we really look to technology in the service of humanity and in the service of our planet.
Okay.
A little stump speech, but...
No, that's great. But, you know, let's be practical here.
Sure.
We kept telling each other that we have to know how to use the mobile, we have to know how to understand AI, and so on and so forth, so that we are knowledgeable. Now you're telling me, both of you, that it is actually in the hands of the technology companies, and they are now replacing capitalism. But how can we reach halfway through? Yanis?
Well, there are two ways. One is to lower the digital walls that have encased us. There are regulatory moves you can take really very simply. So for instance, you know, introduce interoperability, legislate interoperability. They've done it in China. They're not doing it in the West. What does this mean? I mean, I wanted to get out of X once it became, you know, the filthiest wall on any toilet, male toilet in the world. It's, you know, the digital equivalent of awful graffiti in male toilets. That's what X has become. But, you know, I have more than 1 million followers in X. So I went to Blue Sky. I had 10, not 10 million, 10 people initially, right? Now, interoperability means that you can get out of X or out of Meta or out of TikTok or out of Instagram, and then when you move to another platform, which is closer to your ethics, to your to the things that Ramesh is writing and talking about, then X is obliged, whenever I post something in Blue Sky, to convey it to my followers in X. That's interoperability. For that, you need to legislate. That would significantly reduce the monopolistic and monopsonistic power of the tech lords over us. So there are things like that you can do. But that's not enough in its own sense. The question is, who owns the machines? We are not against, neither Ramesh nor I are technophobes. No. Actually, I love my phone. You know, I love all these technologies. I love AI. I think that the fact that you have AI programs that can design antibiotics that save lives is a great manifestation of the majesty of the human spirit. Yeah. But the question is, who owns these technologies? And when they are owned by the 0.001%, who are weaponizing in order to destroy markets, in order to isolate us from one another, in order to effectively create a new kind of feudalism, I call it technofeudalism, that is what the problem is. Yeah. So we need to start rethinking property rights over the technologies that were not developed by them. Every single one of you are developing these technologies. Every time you post something on Amazon, on Meta or Instagram, you are building up their capital, and you are getting nothing for it. Except isolation and alienation.
Yeah. You're the founder of the term technofeudalism. So can you just explain it to the people, because I don't think that everybody is understanding, and why you came up with this terminology, Yanis?
Well, think about it. I mean, I grew up in a world like you, Ramesh, and you, Caroline, where there was a very interesting debate between the left and the right, between those who were in favor of free market capitalism and those of us who were more socialistic, right? But that's all irrelevant now, because, look, the moment you enter Amazon, you exit capitalism, Amazon.com, because you enter something that looks like a market, but it is not a market. Do you know what it is? It is a privately owned Gosplan. Does anybody remember Gosplan? It was the economic planning ministry of the Soviet Union, the purpose of which was to replace markets with an algorithm. It was an algorithm. They called it cybernetics in the Soviet Union, for matching buyers and sellers, all right? Or supposedly in the interest of the people of the Soviet Union. Now, in Amazon, you have that to the nth. And it works beautifully, unlike Gosplan. That didn't work well because they didn't have the technology. But what does it do? The moment you enter Amazon, right? You are totally, there's no way you can see any vendor that the algorithm has not selected for you to see. The algorithm matches you with a vendor, with a seller, so as to maximize the rent that Jeff Bezos gets from this transaction. So you're outside the market system, you click on a button to buy a bicycle or a coffee maker, it comes to you directly, you bypass every market, and Jeff Bezos collects 40% of what you paid for. This is a rent. It's like the rent that feudal lords used to charge the vassals and the serfs and the, the makers of things in their estate. It's like a digital fiefdom, thus technofeudalism.
Yeah.
Well, that was mentioned in your book in 2023. But Ramesh, you are coming from India, I come from Jordan, you come from Greece. The three of us are coming from poor countries. But how can we be in charge and in control of our data and our information and our technology if we are coming from poor countries? So it is the same story.
So what I've been attempting to work on when we were part of the Sanders campaign, and that was when I first met Yanis several years ago, to get his input on what a Bill of Rights could look like related to data, related to artificial intelligence, related to digital technologies, because as Yanis alluded to, and this is really important, none of these platforms would be worth a penny without our data. Yet how many of you here know what data is being collected about you, by whom, for how long? The answer is none of us, right? It's one thing for Instagram to collect my data when I'm posing on there, having always a good time, huh? But it's another thing for data to be collected about me when I'm using my credit card, maybe buying cigarettes or something like that, right? I do not want these forms of data to be aggregated, but because part of my own sovereignty as a human being is my ability to control my own relationship to the wider world, or not control, have power over it in many different ways, right? So I want to just argue here that what we need is a Bill of Rights, not as some sort of branding slogan, but first and foremost to deal with the economic insecurity and precarity that has driven this rise of neo-fascism and tech lords who are embracing fascist ideologies as we speak. And I have to speak about this very directly. These folks, have you ever thought about why there's so much investment in bunkers, in interplanetary colonies, these sorts of things? Why would the wealthiest people in the history of the world and the most powerful people in the history of the world be so disinterested in our species and our planet? It's just a question, right? Why would they embrace philosophies like the Dark Enlightenment that excoriate and look down on women, look down on people of color? That's because they don't believe in the future. So what I want to argue for is a future that we can all believe in, and I truly believe we can get there if actually the demos rules, right? And that's really what I care about.
Okay, Ramesh,
Yeah.
you also believe that technology is in a way, what's happening now, the investment and what's happening also with the control of the technology companies, that they are also affecting our human rights issues, also affecting our inequity, and everything that it deals with the human being. Can you just explain that to me, because I'm trying to understand
Absolutely. I just want to ask everybody in the audience, and Yanis and Caroline, you all think about what data can be collected about you that can actually capture you as a human being. It's a philosophical question, right? How much of your intelligence is pattern recognition based? I know enough of patterns to follow these arrows, but I think we're all more intelligent than that. We have the ability to reason. We have emotional intelligence. By the way, non-humans have intelligence, animals, plants, etc., right? So my point is, increasingly, if we are turned into so-called data bodies driven by and for these surveillance corporations, all without appropriate consent, transparency, or democratic governance, we have a big issue. But we can change that entire approach by actually first and foremost making visible and legible to everybody what is being collected about us, for what purposes, with what gain. If you think and look around the world, where in the world are people being paid for their data? Where around the world do people have equity in these companies, as you have called for, as we discussed with the universal basic dividend model? Where are these approaches, right? And I just want to remind everybody that the history of tech is not this, okay? I'm from Silicon Valley. Many of the tech pioneers were interested in technology as a way to enhance creativity, expand human capacity, not replace it.
Okay. Now, we're in this part of the world, the GCC and the Middle East, and you know that Qatar is one of the leading also countries, including also the UAE and Saudi, leading in investment in AI and technology. So what's your advice to them so that we are at least sure that they are on the right track and not going or falling in the same traps like the other companies as well? What's your advice, Yanis?
Very simple. Do not invest in data centers.
Yeah.
Do not invest in supercomputers unless you control the algorithms, unless you control the ghost in the machine. The Chinese, China is not a very rich country, it's a middle-income country. When they started investing in what I call cloud capital, these cloud technologies, right, they asked the question, your penultimate question, how can a relatively poor country achieve technological sovereignty? And the answer was, they have to control their own data. Yeah. And they created a firewall. So this is what Qatar should do. And by the way, you know, we happen to be not just in the Gulf area, we happen to be in a broader area where, very close to where we are now, machines are being trained, algorithms are being trained to produce products that are being sold to the first world, in inverted commas, to Britain, for instance, to the National Health Service, by companies like Palantir. And how do they train those algorithms? In Gaza. I had one of those engineers telling me that, you know, the bombing of the Gazans in densely confined areas was an excellent thing. And I thought I was going to faint, get a, you know, have a heart attack. And I said, why? And he said, well, because if you bomb a population, they move rapidly, they produce a lot of data, we can train our algorithms, and then we can sell the National Health Service an algo that helps them plan for emergencies in a Birmingham or a Manchester hospital. So it is not the tech folks, it's who owns them and whose data is being utilized.
So we have to do it to nationalize it, to make it internal. This is something that the GCC is also thinking of doing. But what's your take? What's your advice to them? Because we're running out of time.
There's a huge opportunity for states to show a vision forward that supports employment, that supports and fights against economic insecurity, and actually gives people a greater chance to govern and have power over their own digital footprints, their so-called data bodies, right? This is all possible. It's all right in front of us right now, and we can act. These are huge these are things we can enact right now, very much so.
Okay, I need one answer and one word from each one of you. If capitalism is dying, who's replacing it? One word.
Technofeudalism.
Oligarchic government and private corporations colonizing parts of the world.
Well, it's very sad to hear that, but thank you very much. Thank you very much to my panelists. Thank you.